Okay, Mr. Baumel,
State for the call, Officer.
do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You take the witness stand over here.
Officer, would you please tell us your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Preston Arroyo, A-R-R-O-Y-O.
And how are you presently employed?
Police officer, Akron Police Department.
And how long have you been a police officer with the Akron Police Department?
It's been about a year and 8 months now.
And when did you officially start with the Akron Police Department?
Would have been the summer of 2016.
Summer of 2016?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us what is your duties and responsibilities generally as a police officer?
Regular patrol. I work 1900 to 3:30 a.m. Everything that you would expect. Serving the citizens of Akron as in the capacity of taking reports, settling disputes, and everything that you would imagine.
Whatever you're called to do, pretty much.
Correct.
And when you gave us the time of your shift, would that be from 7 p.m. in the evening to 3:30 a.m. in the morning? Is that your shift?
Correct.
And as far as being a patrol officer, do you patrol the city in a marked cruiser?
I do.
And during the time that you've worked as a police officer, have you been alone in that cruiser, or do you have a partner?
Most of the time I have a partner.
So I'm going to direct your attention, go back to March 20th of 2017. You were fairly new to the force, less than a year in, is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And were you working the shift of 7 p.m. to 3:30 a.m.?
Yes, I was.
And did you have an opportunity or have a reason to respond to a call at 797 Danmead?
Yes.
And do you know if that call was a result of a 911 call that went into dispatch?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I'm going to play that 911 call. And if the volume's too high or too low, just give me a signal if you will.
Conversation recorded on March 20th, 2017 at 20:55 on Channel 6.
What was the emergency?
797 Danmead Street.
797 Danmead.
Your EAN and EAD.
Okay, I'll do this, put that back to the class. And DAN.
EAN is the Nancy and the Mary EAD.
Okay, Danmead, okay. Go ahead, got that. What's going on there?
Okay, we had a stolen dirt bike and we found out somebody that had it, so we came here to meet them to retrieve it back. We were in talking with Agri earlier today and Council was come over here with us to retrieve the bike, but they ended up getting another call.
Okay.
We're doing the guys they don't want to give it to us, and we have the title in hand trying to get it back.
Okay, did you make the report of it being taken?
Yes, there's another.
Okay.
There was a report number right now, but
Okay, that's okay.
we just gave the laser and
Yeah.
I gave over.
Okay, and are you in a vehicle waiting, or?
I'm standing on the sidewalk with them, we have our vehicles here as well, but yeah, we've got everybody's talking with them right now, and the title in here, but.
Okay, do you know the people?
And actually the guy that posted it happens to be my ex-sister-in-law's, sister's ex-boyfriend.
Okay, so this has been a conversion.
Yeah, I mean, we had the COD that posted it, we had a relationship with him whatsoever. Just happened to see it on Facebook today.
Okay, so but you did make a report that it was stolen, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
About a year ago.
Okay, what's your first name?
My name is Michelle. And I think J-I-L-L, report is posted on my husband's name, Curtis Gill.
Okay. And your telephone number is the 330-808-2189 number?
Yes.
Okay. Alright, so, we'll send an officer with the bank of deputy. Okay, what? Okay, and now? Okay, wait. What just happened? What's his name? Is he black or white guy? Okay, and he just shot your father-in-law?
The guy was trying to take off on the dirt bike from my husband to take her away. My husband was driving north and trying to stop him from doing so. And then my father-in-law, not my father-in-law, got here.
Okay.
And he got in there because he...
Okay, wait, so he just shot him then?
Ma'am,
Yes.
we got a nickel murder on. They tried to kill my dog.
Okay, hold on. What is your father's name?
This is Steve.
Okay, what's your name?
Ma'am, listen to me, honey. My social security number is 281-588829. My name is Law&Crime. I'm 53 years old.
Hyde?
Huh?
Hyde, H-Y-D-E?
15888.
No, what is your last name?
My name is Mike. Steve.
Okay, sir, what's your last name?
Right, N-I-G.
Okay, so let's see. Did you just finish the man?
I asked you, he's trying to...
Okay.
First run into my daughter.
Okay, hold on, okay. Where is the guy now?
Huh?
Where is he?
He's in the middle of the street.
Okay, where did you get him?
I shot him, where?
Where did you do it? You got him what by the body?
Honey, it's dark, I think I shot him in the chest. He was trying to...
Okay.
My daughter, to my son-in-law, and then to me. I had no choice.
Okay, Brian, where is the guy?
Wow.
Brian, where is the guy?
Where's your gun? She wants to know.
Guess what?
It's in his pocket.
Okay, what is Brian wearing?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
What is he wearing? What's Brian wearing?
What is Roy wearing?
Yeah.
He's an all green jacket, green, got a green shirt, gray hair.
Okay, how old is he?
52, 53.
Alright. Okay, what's your camera line with me? Is he playing the gun right now?
He's got the gun in his pocket.
Okay.
Very concealed, but, you know.
Okay. Is this the government system?
Yes, it is.
Alright. What's your father's last name? William White?
1990.
Okay. So now that he's died, okay, is he want something on him?
He's very religious and he's passed.
So he just died?
I'm sorry, what?
He just died? Okay, hold on, just bear in mind with me. Yeah.
There's a fire hydrant beside him. I laid my gun down underneath them.
Okay, well, I don't really want to have to take it now.
Right.
Okay, so the gun is next to the fire
Okay, so please come here.
Okay, alright.
Okay.
And do everyone you said to do it right now?
Yeah, this is coming.
Okay.
Mr. Bonnell, for the record, is that marked as something?
Your Honor, that'll be State's Exhibit number 11, for the record.
End of recording. Conversation recorded on.
Okay, officer, in regards to the 911 call and the way the 911 dispatch works, do they wait to the end of the call to their having officers go to the scene, or is there a mechanism for them to contact police while they're talking with whoever made the 911 call?
Yeah, they will contact us as they're still gathering notes if it's the calls requires that it's necessary. Yeah.
And do you recall approximately what time you got the call to go to that scene and what was the nature of the call?
Exactly what time, I'm not sure. It was around 8:50.
And do you recall the nature of the call as far as what you were told?
Shots fired, possibly someone struck.
And when you got that call, were you by yourself or were you with your partner in your police cruiser?
Yeah, I was with my partner at that time.
And who was your partner at that time?
At that time, it was Officer Sanders.
And do you recall how far away you were from the scene or how long it took you to get to the scene?
I recall that we were in pretty close proximity. It probably took us no more than a few minutes, I would want to say.
Okay. So a few minutes after you would have received the call from dispatch?
Correct.
Tell us then what you saw and what occurred when you arrived on the scene at 7971.
When we arrived on scene, I turned on a Dan Mead. There was people in the street. Seemed somewhat chaotic. Pulled my cruiser off to the side of the road. I could see a group of people huddled around an individual who was lying in the street. I exited my cruiser. I was approached by a white male. I began asking him questions in regard to who had the gun. He had a laceration on his hand. That's why he caught my attention. At that time, the other people in the street were, I want to say, motioning down the road a bit to an older gentleman who ended up being Mr. Knight.
Okay. When you say motioning, do you mean pointing or?
Yeah, I want to say that they were, saying he's over there, making gestures with their hands, just in that manner.
And so as you approached Dan Mead then, would the group of people be before the man that they were motioning to?
Correct.
And did you notice any vehicles around the scene at the time when you approached?
Yeah, there were multiple vehicles in the street. There was the individual who was on the ground was right next to a vehicle that was parked on the side of the street. I want to say not underneath of it, but very, very close to the vehicle.
And do you recall if EMS or medical services had arrived either before or after your arrival?
They were not on scene. We were the first on scene out of all emergency personnel.
Officer, I'm going to show you now what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 2H. And do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
That is the individual who was lying in the street.
And 2R?
That is the red truck that Mr. Knight was standing in front of, I believe. Yep, that's it.
For the benefit of the jury, then I'm going to put these two exhibits on the docket cam. showing 2H, can you tell us then, officer, is minus the people that you saw, is this the scene that you saw as you approached on Dan Mead that evening?
Yes, it is.
And tell us what we're looking at here.
You're viewing the victim lying in the street next to the truck. He's obviously now covered in a white sheet that wasn't there prior. Off in the distance you can see, I believe it's a red Chevy truck. That is the vehicle that Mr. Knight was standing in front of when I arrived on scene.
And I think if you actually, can you circle, if you use your finger and put on the screen, you'll be able to circle that red Chevy truck. And you indicated that Mr. Knight was standing in front of it at that time, is that correct?
Correct.
And showing you now 2R. And can you tell us what we're looking at here?
That is the red Chevy truck that Mr. Knight was standing in front of.
So the individuals, or the group of people were directing you toward Mr. Knight. Tell us what happened at that point.
Correct. At that time, we were being directed down the street toward Mr. Knight. Gun drawn, I was ordering him to show me his hands. I was not aware if he had the gun still or not. I could see that there was nothing in his hands as I began to get closer to him. He was speaking with a female that was next to him. As we got closer, again, asking him questions, or I should say giving him directives with his hands. We ordered him to put his hands, I believe, on top of his head or behind his back. He was then cuffed, and he stated that his weapon or his gun was lying near a fire hydrant, if I recall correctly.
As a result, did you go and check by the fire hydrant area to see if that was true?
I could see the fire hydrant, and if I recall correctly, I believe I could see the gun lying next to the fire hydrant.
What happened next?
Mr. Knight, within the cuffing process or in the process of transporting him or patting him down to the cruiser, he made statements with the summation that he had to fire his weapon in order to protect his daughter and family. I believe he said something along the lines that they were going to get hit with the dirt bike.
He specified his daughter in that statement?
I want to say so, yes.
Showing you now State's Exhibits 2U and 2V. Have you look at those photographs and ask you if you're able to identify those. And what you identify those to be?
That's the fire hydrant and the revolver, Mr. Knight's revolver lying next to the fire hydrant.
These are true and accurate pictures of the scene of the fire hydrant that you saw that evening?
Yes.
Putting 2U on the docket cam. And can you tell the jury what we're looking at right here?
Yes, that's the fire hydrant, and then there is the revolver with the black handle right there next to it.
In regard to the piece of paper, did there just happen to be a piece of paper there?
No, that an officer must have wanted to denote that there was something of importance there. He laid the piece of paper down to do so.
Is that a common technique? A patrol officer might put a piece of paper down where there might be some evidence so it doesn't get tampered with or moved?
Correct.
And a little bit of a close-up here, 2B, is that just a close-up of the firearm by the fire hydrant?
Yes, it is.
So you're escorting Mr. Knight to the cruiser, and what happens at that time?
He would have been quickly patted down by his truck. He's escorted to the cruiser. I want to say that I would have patted him down even further, emptied his pockets.
And what's the purpose of patting him down at that point?
Well, that time he's under arrest. It's officer safety, everyone's safety, and then to see what else is on his person.
And which crew, was he placed then in your cruiser or a different cruiser, if you recall?
Yes, he was placed in car 13, the cruiser that we were working that night.
That would have been your cruiser, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to hand you two exhibits now, Officer. State's Exhibit 12 and State's Exhibit 13. First of all, in regards to State's Exhibit 12, do you recognize this exhibit?
This looks like his holster.
And in regards to the exhibit, is there a label on the exhibit?
Yes, there is.
And what's the purpose of the label?
Just to denote what's in the package.
Okay. And does it indicate who the finder is?
Yeah, the finder is myself, Officer Arroyo.
And in regard to the description on the package, what does it say?
It says a brown, I believe it's Glaco pistol holster, the brand of the holster.
And does the package also indicate an owner?
The owner is William Knight.
Handing you then State's Exhibit 13. Ask you to identify that exhibit.
These are the speed loaders that would have been on Mr. Knight.
And in regards to the label, once again, can you go through the label and the information on the label?
I myself is the finder. The owner is Mr. Knight. And they have the victim on there as well, Mr. Johnson. The notes on the package say live rounds found in pouch for carrying extra ammunition on his belt on his left hip.
On his belt, on his left hip?
Correct.
Just tell me your scissors. I'm going to put these two exhibits then on the docket cam. Sure. First of all, this is State's Exhibit 12, correct? And is that the label that you were just reading off of in regards to State's Exhibit 12?
Yes, it is.
And inside, is that the holster that you just identified?
Yes.
In regards to State's Exhibit 13, once again, we have the label with all the information that you read to the jury. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this is the holder of the speed loaders?
Correct.
And officer, are you familiar with the term speed loaders and the functionality of a speed loader?
I am.
And what is the purpose of a speed loader?
To quickly reload a revolver after you've spent all the rounds.
And these speed loaders each have how many bullets on them?
5.
After you retrieve these pieces of evidence, what do you do with them?
Are you asking in the instance on Danby or just in general?
In this instance or in general?
In that instance, they would have been placed on the dashboard of the cruiser that I was working.
And they would have been tagged in as evidence, is that correct?
Correct.
After then you placed Mr. Knight into the cruiser, what did you do next?
Mr. Knight was placed in the cruiser. Any property that I would have gotten off of his person was placed on the dashboard of the cruiser inside. IVS was turned on in the cruiser. Vehicle was locked, and then I returned the gun that was by the fire hydrant.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you do with the gun?
I did nothing with the gun. I just stood by the gun.
And for what purpose?
For everyone's safety, to make sure no one was going to pick it up and use it. basically.
As far as kind of the chain of command, why aren't you just picking up the gun at that point and seizing it as evidence?
Well, at that time, it's a crime scene. I didn't want to tamper with the gun, which is now evidence, or any, didn't want to disturb the scene any more than it had already been disturbed.
Are you anticipating detectives then will be following up, taking control of the scene and the investigation?
Correct, detectives in the crime scene unit.
And this all occurred on Dan Mead Avenue in Akron, Summit County, Ohio, is that correct?
Correct.
May I have just 1 minute, Your Honor? No further questions.
Patrolman, if I ask you a question and it's a little vague, it's tough, or if it's tough to understand, I'll be glad to repeat it. Is that fair?
Yep.
Can you keep your voice up a little bit, sir? You're kind of soft-spoken.
Sure.
You get a call from dispatch said shots fired. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
And that usually causes several cruisers to head to that location. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we heard a 911 call. You were listening to that 911 call?
Yes.
All right. And during the middle of that 911 call, did you hear a male voice, Mr. Knight, say that someone tried to run down his daughter?
I believe that was just stated in the 911 call, yeah.
Okay. Then, now, when you approached the scene, you saw, take this as fact, that Mr. Johnson is laying in the street by the pickup truck. Is that correct?
Correct.
People are pointing toward a red pickup truck and a person that turns out to be Mr. Johnson. Is that correct?
Yes, they're motioning to the older white male, Mr. Knight.
All right. Now, you approached Mr. Knight, correct?
Yes.
Are you the first officer to approach Mr. Knight?
My partner was next to me, but I was probably the closest to Mr. Knight.
Right. As you approach Mr. Knight, does he attempt to run or evade you?
No, sir.
Is your command, your first command to Mr. Knight to show me your hands or something to that effect?
Yes.
Does he comply?
He did not seem to make any more or less motions. He was just standing there.
All right. He didn't seem to hide anything, did he?
No.
In terms of, did you ask about a weapon?
I believe so.
Did Mr. Knight tell or show you where the weapon was?
Yes.
And that weapon was at the base of a fire hydrant, is that correct?
That's where it was, yes.
All right. You wanted Mr. Knight to put his hands behind his back for handcuffs?
Correct.
In all these commands that you gave Mr. Knight, did he comply with all of them?
Yes.
As he is being handcuffed or led to a cruiser, he makes a statement, doesn't he?
Yes.
And is that statement, and if I paraphrase it, feel free to correct me, but he's worried about his family, is he not?
Yes.
And he's saying to you that someone tried to run down my daughter or my family. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
And this is minutes after the incident. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yes.
You found a holster when you patted down Mr. Knight, correct?
I don't recall the holster and where it was on his person,
Okay?
but as the individual patting him down, I'm supposing that I would have been the one to, find it.
All right. These fast loaders, was there any indication that night that those fast loaders were ever used?
Not to my knowledge.
Patrolman, thank you very much.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, officer. You may testify. Mr. Bono, please.
We're going to be calling Sergeant Mostar.
Thank you. Sergeant, if you would raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please take your seat.
Officer, would you please tell us your full name, spell your last name for the record,
Yes, Sergeant John Mostar, M-O-S-T-A-R.
and how are you presently employed?
I'm currently employed with the Akron Police Department.
And what is your role with the Akron Police Department?
Currently, I'm working in the burglary unit or property against crimes.
And how long have you been a law enforcement officer in total?
Over 23 years.
And has that all been with the Akron Police Department?
Yes, it has.
And in addition to your present duties, what prior duties have you had with the Akron Police Department?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
In addition to your present duties, what other prior duties have you had or prior roles have you had with the Akron Police Department?
Prior to my move to the burglary unit, I worked in our crime scene unit.
And what is the crime scene unit?
That's the unit, we process scenes, we take photographs, document crime scenes, we collect evidence and tag that evidence.
And is it also known as CSU?
Yes, also known as CSU.
And does CSU get called out to every criminal call, or are there only certain calls?
No, only certain calls, more serious crimes against persons calls, burglaries, some robberies.
And as far as the determination as to when you get called or not, who makes that decision?
That would be the somebody on scene of the call, a supervisor on scene.
In regards to homicides and other violent offenses, have you had occasion to go out there as a member of the crime scene unit?
Yes,
And how long were you with the crime scene unit?
just over 11 years.
And as far as when you have a homicide, what is the role of the crime scene unit as it relates to the lead detectives and the patrol officers?
We consult with the detectives on scene and the patrol officers, try to figure out what happened. Usually it's the first responder's role is to secure the scene, so there's usually the crime scene tape up by the time we get there. And we'll meet with the detective and patrolman to try to find out what happened and figure out what kind of evidence that we need to collect.
Is it fair to say they give you information and then you decide how to process the scene, what to photograph and collect as far as evidence?
Yes.
And after you're done with that, for the most part, is the case the responsibility of a detective or lead detectives, and that's the extent of your responsibilities?
Yes.
Let's go back then to March 20th of 2017, and did the crime scene unit become involved in an investigation at 797 Danmead?
Yes, we did.
And do you recall approximately when you would have received that call?
It was approximately about 21:10 or 9:10 p.m.
And tell us what happened.
We responded to 797 Danmead. We got there approximately about 25 after 9 p.m. We parked our crime scene van on Danmead and consulted with officers, detectives, and we started processing the crime scene.
In regards to generally, what type of information were you given as far as the crime and what responsibilities you had to carry out there?
We were told that there was a shooting on the street. A gentleman was deceased on a motorbike in front of 797. And we were told there was a gun on scene also near a fire hydrant, and there was an officer standing by guarding that weapon.
As far as the victim, was the victim still present when you arrived?
Yes, the victim was still on scene.
And do you know if EMS or any medical personnel had been to the scene prior to you?
Yes, the EMS had been there and had moved the victim. We were told the victim was initially further underneath the Ford F-250 that was parked on the street and was pulled out.
So there's a desire to try to preserve the scene as much as possible, but the welfare of an individual takes precedence over that, is that correct?
Correct.
But as far as when you get there, then the victim is there, but you had information that he had been moved slightly, is that
Yes.
fair to say?
Yes.
What did you do then?
I, along with Detective Bill Morris, who is now retired, we started the process of the scene. Detective Morris took the photographs, and I assisted with taking video of the crime scene. That's usually our first step. We'll photograph it, videotape it, and then second round, we put down placards to document certain pieces of evidence and key points we want to focus on. And then we'll photograph and videotape again.
In regards to the video then, is audio present on the video?
No, there's no audio. That's standard for our unit. We don't use audio on our video.
And in this case then, there is a video of the scene there at 797 Danmead?
Yes, there is.
Your Honor, well, we've marked as State's Exhibit number 14, being the crime scene video. We're going to ask permission to play that at this time.
Any objections, Mr. O'Brien?
Very well.
You may proceed then. Let's see, it should be, you have to switch over to the computer.
I do. I'm just trying to get, I have to eject the 911 call first, Judge.
Okay.
And I'll stop you right there. We see a number, 105 there. What's the significance of that?
Yes, that's my ID number with the Akron Police Department. Every officer is assigned a specific number, and before we do photography work or video work, we photograph our ID card to show who's the one taking video or photographs.
And Detective, feel free to narrate points of significance.
This is the intersection of Dan Mead and Eastwood. We usually photograph or take video of an establishing photo to show where this takes place. So right now we're on Dan Mead, and we're looking northbound on Dan Mead. It's a dead-end street up north, so we're looking upward, northbound on Dan Mead. And there's a Ford F-250 on the right-hand side. The victim is covered in the sheet, along with the dirt bike lying on the ground. This is the left side of the street across from the Ford F-250. There's a Ford, light-colored Ford.
Let me stop it there as well. In regards to the lighting, do you use any tools to enhance lighting when you're out there at nighttime?
We do have our current light was not working properly, so I had a handheld unit, LED lights. So we try to do the best we can with the equipment we have. And this is the Ford. This is parked in front of 798 Dan Mead. And on the ground, you can see some white tablets. On the video, they look white. In the photographs, they appear to be more blue. And this is looking westbound while on Dan Mead in front of 798. There's the silver light-colored Ford. And then directly behind that is a Ford Escort LX maroon four-door. Ford, I believe it was a Ford Escort LX. This is just another angle showing there's plastic baggie underneath the silver car and some other pills on the ground. And this is just a close-up showing the side of the Escort, showing some scratches visible in the paint.
Now, as far as for your purposes, What, if any, information did you have that made this area significant?
We were told this was an area where the dirt bike had been riding. I saw the damage on the car. Later it was discovered that the damage was old damage. We wanted to document the way we found it.
The white pills, blue pills?
Yeah, white pills, blue pills, baggie of marijuana.
Okay. Those are also indicative that somebody had been in that area?
Yes.
The bike maybe had been in that area?
And then this is looking southbound toward Eastwood Avenue. It's a different angle. To the left is the victim in the dirt bike, in the Ford F-250. And that's in front of 797 Dan Mead. And then this is a little further north of the scene. We're showing the fire hydrant, which is the location of the gun, and the red Chevy truck driven by Mr. Knight. And then this is just closer up near the Chevy truck, the red truck, and the fire hydrant, looking northbound again. And just the side view of the truck and the fire hydrant. And then 804 Danmead is the address where the red truck was parked in front of. That's also where the hydrant is located. And you can see the gun on the ground by the hydrant. And just a pan looking southbound. And this is the Smith & Wesson revolver found by the fire hydrant. This was again in front of 804 Danmead. And then just a view from behind the red truck looking southbound. Okay, then after that was done, the placards were set up to document certain pieces of evidence, and then we went through a second time and did photographs and videotaped again with the placards in place. Just placard 4 to document the dirt bike, placard 3 to document the victim, placard 5 that was in front of 800 Danmead. During the processing, we received some information that possibly a witness was standing there, or possibly one of the participants in the incident was standing there. And because there's a lot going on, I just used that to document a location, maybe to possibly assist the detectives in their interviews with people involved in the scene. And this is placard 6, which is the revolver by the fire hydrant. And this was from 797 Danmead. And also earlier in the video, placard 1 was shown to document the drugs that were laying on the ground, the pills, the baggies, and placard 2 was put on top of the red Ford Escort. This is behind 797 Danmead. We were told that there were some dirt bike tracks in the snow, so we just went back there and I documented that with the video camera.
You indicated this is behind?
Correct, in the backyard, the back driveway of 797 Danmead. Okay.
That being State's Exhibit 14, did that video truly and accurately depict the scene of 797 Danmead and surrounding areas on the evening of March 20th, 2017?
Yes.
And we'll get to the photographs that you took in a minute, but jumping ahead, as far as a crime scene diagram, is that something that is routinely done in a case like this?
Usually on all homicide scenes, we'll complete a diagram.
Okay. And what is the purpose of that?
Just to show an overview, bird's eye view of the scene and show where evidence is located. Sometimes it's easier to see it looking down on it, just to show addresses, location of evidence.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes.
And in State's Exhibit 15, ask if you can identify that exhibit.
Yes, this is the crime scene sketch I completed, a copy.
And I'm going to put it on the DocuCam. We'll entirely fit on there. But to be clear, the sketch that you do, is it considered to be to scale?
No, they're not to scale. We just try to do the best we can to get a general idea of what the scene looked like.
Okay. So when we see the location of vehicles and houses, that's your best drawing of an estimate as to their location in reference to one?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
As far as the bottom portion then of State's Exhibit 15, can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yes, the bottom is labeled Eastwood Avenue, and then we're on Danmead Avenue. We see 798 on the left-hand side, and that's where the light-colored Ford and the maroon Ford are parked. On the other side, in front of 797 Danmead, is the location of the victim, the dirt bike, and the Ford F-250.
And you do have some measurements, like I see at the bottom there, the width of the street, is that correct?
Yes, the width of Danmead Avenue is approximately 26 feet.
And is there also the truck length, there's some measurements as to the Ford F-250?
Yes, approximately 18 feet 6 inches.
As far as the top portion then of the diagram, can you tell us what we're looking at?
This is further up north on Danmead, and this is the revolver that was located using photographic placard 6. This is in front of 804 Danmead, and then also the red Chevy truck driven by Mr. Knight.
And you actually have a key for the placards, is that correct?
Yes.
So when we see 1 through 6, those are the different placards that you set down there and their significance as to each one.
Correct.
And you once again emphasize there with underline that this is not to scale.
That's correct.
This is a true copy of the diagram that you created as a result of your investigation?
Yes.
Right, I'm going to now hand you a big stack of photographs. These are actually marked without going through them individually, which we will do, is 2A to 2MM. I'll just have you look at the entire group. Look at it one at a time. Sergeant, in general then, State's Exhibit 2A through 2MM, what are these photographs of?
Those are photographs of the scene at 797 Danmead.
And do they truly and accurately depict the various items that you're photographing?
Yes.
And we saw the video, so I'm going to go through these one at a time at a fairly fast pace. But have you describe what each photograph shows, if you would?
Okay.
First of all, State's Exhibit 2A.
Yes, this is the ID card of Detective Bill Morris, who's now retired. She did the photographs. This is the,
2B.
excuse me, this is the location photo showing Danmead and Eastwood.
And there's also a no outlet sign that's listed on
Yes,
there?
no outlet underneath the streets.
2C.
That's the front of address of 797 Danmead.
D.
It's also 797 Danmead, a little further back.
E. If you can see it.
A little bit hard to see with the glare, but I believe it's still 797. I'm kind of looking,
There's that little bit.
kind of southeastern toward Eastwood.
So you can see a right portion of the house there as well as the tree?
Correct.
And then 2F, I think we'll see that same tree again?
Yes, that's in front of 797 Dan Mead, and then to the right is the black F-250 pickup truck.
G.
And this is in front, this is behind the Ford F-250, in front of the light colored Ford. We're looking northbound on Dan Mead. You can see the victim and the dirt bike.
And you may have testified to this before, but the sheet, was that placed on the victim prior to your arrival?
Yes, that was placed there prior to our arrival.
And as far as the truck, is there a space between the truck and the driveway, if you can tell from the screen?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a space between the driveway and the bumper of the truck, or bumper of the truck.
Does it go truck, the driveway, then the light pole, and then the truck?
Yes.
In order?
Excuse me.
Go back out. 2I.
This is the rear of the Ford F-250 showing the license plate.
J.
And this is just another photograph in the rear of the truck, looking northbound, victim Mr. Johnson and the dirt bike.
If you know, Sergeant, was the dirt bike at all moved prior to your arrival?
That I don't know.
2K.
And this is again just another photograph of the dirt bike and the victim from a different angle.
2L.
This shows the photograph of the maroon Ford behind the silver Ford in front of 798 Dan Mead.
And these were the two vehicles that were parked across the street from the black Ford?
Yes, correct.
2M.
Just another view showing the light colored Ford and the Ford Escort. And also on the ground, you'll notice the pills to the near the driver's side door and the rear passenger side door, the rear driver's side door rather, of the Ford.
2N.
And there's just another little bit closer photo showing the pills on the pavement. And you can see the color a little more noticeable in this, blue.
2O.
Which is another photograph showing the pills on the ground.
As far as the collection of these items, was there any challenge involved in collecting the pills?
Yes, the ground was wet at the time, and the blue pills dissolved very quickly. We tried to scoop them up, but they just disintegrate with the wet pavements. We did the best we could as far as scraping up the blue pills and putting them in a packet.
And those would have been submitted to a crime lab or a crime analyst to examine those?
Yes, they were analyzed.
And are you aware of the results of that?
Yes, I am.
What were the results of those pills?
The blue pills were oxycodone, approximately 0.1 gram.
In regards to where we see almost a combination of several of the blue pills, what part of the vehicle is that?
This was on the rear driver's side part of the light colored Ford that was first in line in front of the maroon Ford.
Would that have been closer or farther away from the vehicle that would have been up on that?
It would be a little bit closer to the light colored Ford here.
2P.
And this was a photograph, this is the rear bumper of the light colored Ford showing the plastic baggie just underneath the bumper.
And what did the baggie appear to contain?
I believe that the baggie had a couple of pills. There was one baggie with marijuana and one with 2 pills. I can't tell from that photograph.
Okay. 2Q.
This was, I believe it's 804 Danmead. Yes, 804. This is where the fire hydrant is located.
2S,
And this is in front of 804 Danmead. This is the red Chevy truck driven by Mr. Knight.
2T,
And there's another angle looking northbound showing the truck and the fire hydrant. Again, in front of 804.
So the truck and fire hydrant was?
In front of 804 Danmead.
then you put the placards down,
Yes, placards were put down and then the scene was photographed again with the placards.
and this being 2W.
And this shows the blue pills on the ground. And just a closer view of placard 1 showing the blue pills.
And that's 2X. 2Y,
Placard 2 showing the scratches on the car was up on jacks behind the light colored Ford.
2Z,
And then it shows victim Mr. Johnson and the dirt bike with placard 4.
and the sheet now has been removed from Mr.
Yes.
Johnson, is that correct?
Correct.
And how close did you get to Mr. Johnson as far as, do you have any reason to examine his injuries?
Fairly close. I know Detective Morris was closer than I when the medical examiner got on scene, but it was fairly close.
2AA,
And there's the picture of Mr. Johnson.
2BB,
And then just the clothing of Mr. Johnson shows the tear on his left pant leg up near the thigh area.
and I see something on his left wrist. Would that be from the medical personnel?
Yes, that would be from the medical personnel.
Okay, do you know exactly what that
I
is?
believe they try to get a pulse, and that's one of the stickers they put on to try to see if they get a pulse when they first arrive.
2CC,
This is the right leg of Mr. Johnson, the right shoe.
2DD,
That shows 800 Danmead.
2EE,
A little further view of 800 Danmead.
2FF,
Placard number 6 showing the revolver in front of 804 Danmead.
2GG.
And just a closer view of the revolver.
Did you also take pictures of an individual at the scene?
Yes, pictures were taken of Mr. Gill.
Okay, and why was that?
He had some injuries.
Showing you then 2HH,
And that's just an overall photo to identify who the pictures are being taken of.
and do you recall where he would have been at that time?
This was in backseat of one of the cruisers. I don't know specifically which one.
Okay, but he's sitting in the cruiser at this point.
I believe so.
2II,
And then just another photo of Mr. Gill. You can see his left hand in the webbing. There's some blood by his thumb.
2JJ,
And just a closer view of his left hand showing the blood.
2KK,
And just another angle showing his left hand.
2LL,
This would be Mr. Gill's left leg showing some blood on his left shin.
and 2MM.
And that's just a close-up photo of the injury of his left shin.
Once again, these photos, 2A through 2MM, they truly and accurately depict all the objects that you've described in Danmead.
Yes.
As far as then the weapon, what happened to the gun that was located by the fire hydrant?
We took that down to the station, we tagged that into evidence.
As far as the weapon is concerned then, when you collect that item from the fire hydrant, do you check to see whether it's loaded or the status of ammunition in it?
Yes.
And can you tell us what you found when you picked up and examined the firearm?
The .357 revolver had contained a capacity of 5 in the cylinders where the bullets are kept. Inside the cylinder were 2 spent shell casings or bullet casings and 3 live bullets.
Can you give that now, Station Exhibit 16? Ask you if you're able to identify that exhibit?
Yes, this is the Smith & Wesson .357 revolver collected from 804 Danby.
And the ammunition is separate at this point?
Yes, the ammunition is separate. There's 3 bullets and 2 casings.
Bring this down on the dock cam. First of all, the bullets. Is this the status of these bullets when you observed them in the gun?
Yes.
You indicated 3 live rounds and 2 spent casings, correct?
Correct.
And now, Captain, are you familiar with how a revolver works, particularly in comparison to a semi-automatic?
Yes, a revolver, when a bullet is fired from a revolver, the shell casing does not get ejected as opposed to a semi-automatic weapon. When you fire a revolver, once a bullet is fired, the cylinder, which is the barrel shape on the gun there, it rotates either left or right and then puts the next bullet in line to be fired.
Okay. So some cases you're looking for shell casings out and around the scene. In this case, because it was a revolver, all the casings are contained inside the gun. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that indicates to you that the gun at some point had been fired 2 times.
Yes.
As far as when you fire this gun one time, do you have to do any kind of activate any mechanisms, cock it, what have you, to make it fire a second time?
Once the revolver is fired and the bullet is ejected from the gun, the cylinder spins and brings the next bullet in line to be fired. And if the trigger is pulled, that bullet is fired and the cylinder will spin again and put the next round in line to be fired.
And the exhibit that I showed, the State's Exhibit 16, does that appear to be in substantially the same condition as when you collected it back on March 20th?
Yes.
No further questions.
Yeah, thank you.
You know what? I apologize. I do have some additional questions.
Darn.
My fault. And believe it or not, I have more photographs. Sergeant, after processing the scene, what happened to the vehicles involved in the case?
The 2 pickup trucks and the dirt bike were towed to our crime scene garage on Cowley Road. It's a secure facility.
And what happened to those vehicles there?
Those vehicles were later processed. I went with Detective Whitmire, we got a closer look.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Those vehicles were processed. We responded to the garage with Detective Whitmire and took some additional photographs of the vehicles.
The first hand states Exhibit 3A through 3I. Ask you if you're able to, well, let's look through them one at a time.
Okay.
And do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those photographs to be?
These are photographs of the motorbike taken at the crime scene garage.
And then State's Exhibit 4A through 4C. And do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, these are photographs of the Ford F-250, the black pickup truck. These are also taken at the crime scene garage.
Yes. And then 5A through 5G. And do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, these are photographs of the red Chevy truck driven by Mr. Knight.
All right, then I'm going to put these on the docket one at a time. First of all, State's Exhibit 3A, signifying the,
That's the photographer, Detective Bill Morris.
you're present for these photographs?
Yes,
Is that correct?
correct.
3B,
This is a photo of the motorbike. It's a photo of the motorbike from the back.
so we're looking at the back tire there?
Yes.
of the motorbike?
That's 3C.
3C. 3D,
That's a photo of the showing the handlebars of the motorbike.
3E,
And that's a photo of the front of the motorbike.
and we can see the front tire of the motorbike as well?
Yes.
Is there a difference in size between the front tire and the back tire?
The front tire was approximately 1 inch bigger than the rear tire.
Front tire was bigger?
I believe it was by about an inch,
I mean, as far as thickness?
or as far as the height off the ground.
Okay. As far as thickness, do you recall?
I can't recall the thickness.
3F, another picture of the back of the dirt bike.
Correct.
3G,
And that's just a side view of the dirt bike.
3H,
Just shows the front wheel of the dirt bike.
and 3I.
That's the VIN plate on the dirt bike.
And those pictures, 3A through 3I, do they truly and accurately depict the dirt bike when it was taken to the garage and photographed?
Yes.
4A,
This is a photograph of the 2008 black Ford F-250.
4B,
It's a different angle of the truck from the front.
and 4C.
That's the driver's side open on the Ford F-250.
In regard to the Ford truck, was the back of the truck ever examined?
I can't recall if we looked inside the back of the truck or not.
Were there any photographs of the back of the truck?
Just the exterior.
And was that black truck then returned to Curtisville?
Yes, it was.
And those photographs, 4A through 4C, they truly and accurately depict the Ford truck in the garage at the police department?
Yes.
5A,
And this is the red Chevy truck driven by Mr. Knight.
5B,
Just a back view of the truck showing the plate.
5C,
The view from the back of the truck looking at the passenger side.
5D,
This is with the driver's side door opened up, a photograph of the contents inside.
5E,
And this is a picture of a, appeared to be like a gun lockbox inside the vehicle.
and do you recall where that was located inside the vehicle?
I don't exactly recall where it was, just in the front driver's side area.
5F,
And the photograph showing the safe opened up.
and then 5G.
And that shows the contents in the bed of the red Chevy truck.
So that's the back of William Knight's truck, correct?
Yes.
And once again, do those photographs, 5A through 5G, truly and accurately depict the red Chevy truck as contained in the garage.
Yes.
All right, Your Honor, now I believe I'm finished with my questioning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Do you want them all up here, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay.
Not going to use them all.
No, I know.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Good afternoon, Mr. O'Brien.
There's a great deal of photos here, and I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as I can. I don't want to refer to all of them. Is it fair to say, Sergeant, that it was a fairly dark night that night?
Yes, it was.
Matter of fact, you have a wet pavement, which would indicate a little bit of rain. Rain equals clouds.
Right, the pavement was wet. Yeah, I can't remember what the weather was, but...
Because I think you said some of these pills were dissolving because the street was wet.
Correct.
Is it fair to say that without some illumination from either your headlights or your LED lights, it would be really dark that night?
Yes.
For instance, showing you 2E. Would you agree with me that without the illumination, that background is very dark?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thanks. Folks, I'm afraid if I use this machine, I'll break it. But you'll get a chance to take all these back into the jury room. Showing you these, showing you 2N. N is in November. Can you describe what's in that photo, sir?
Yes, these are the blue pills that were found in the ground and a couple of, described as cylinder filters. These were on the driver's side of the first Ford, light-colored Ford, and also somewhat in between the first and second vehicles.
Those are the two vehicles that are being, I'll say, mechanically worked on.
Yes.
All right. And those two vehicles were just about opposite the black pickup truck?
Slightly, yes. Almost opposite. I think the vehicles are a little further south than the truck.
And I think you've indicated these pills were sent to BCI for your criminal identification?
Either they were sent out or they were tested in-house by Mike Bellman. I believe he tested them, yes.
Right. And they came back as oxycodone?
Yes.
Oxycodone is in illegals?
Yes.
Okay. And you also found some plastic bags, that's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you 2P as in Paul?
Yes, this was found underneath the rear bumper of the first Ford. I believe that's the baggie that contained 2 pills, white pills.
The baggies contained either these pills and or some marijuana?
Yes, there was a bag of marijuana found as well.
Is it fair to say that these pills and these baggies were found on the street near Mr. Johnson's body?
They were found near, yes.
Item 15, I'm sorry, Exhibit 15 was a sketch of the crime scene. Is that done by yourself, sir?
Yes, it was.
All right. And we agree it's not to scale, and you don't have your little, you don't have a surveyor out there or anything
Correct.
that night.
Right.
Can you give us an approximate distance between where the body is and the front of the red truck?
The body in the front of the red Chevy that was up by the fire hydrant?
Yes.
I may have measurements on the sketch. Without seeing that, I really can't give a ballpark figure.
Okay. Let's go to Curtis Gill and his injuries. I'm talking about, I guess, I'll try to simplify them. I'll just use two of them. 2K and 2 double K and 2 double L.
Yes, 2 double K shows the injury to Mr. Gill's left hand near his thumb, and 2 double L shows the injury to his left shin area.
Do those both show blood?
Yes, they'll show blood.
In your estimation, was that blood fresh?
Yes, I would say it was.
I know you were having trouble picking up the pills, but can you give me an approximate number of pills that you saw on the street?
I think from the photograph, I counted approximately 25, the blue pills.
Okay. And how many little plastic bags?
There was the plastic bag with marijuana and then the plastic bag with the white pills.
Okay. The weapon that you secured, 5-shot,
Yes, 5-shot.
3 live ones still in the cylinder,
That's correct.
2 empty casings? then?
Yes,
All right.
correct.
Which would indicate how many shots were fired?
Yes,
Maybe 2?
possibly 2.
Okay. The inside the red pickup truck, which would be 5, let's simplify, 5 E and F. There's a gun safe in there, sir? Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that typical of people that secure their weapons while they're traveling down the road?
It can be used for that, sure.
All right. Is that something also of a safety measure?
Yes, it can be a safety measure as well.
Sergeant, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Any further, Mr. Plummer?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your
You
Honor.
may sit down. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's a little past 12:15. Let's take our lunch break at this time. Let's take an hour if you would be back at 1:15 back in the jury room, and we will resume as soon as possible after that. Thank you.
All rise.